us because this is going to be a little bit all over the place. There are so many things to talk about, and we did not know how to accurately split this up into multiple podcasts. So we're just going to throw a lot at you. And we're going to start with
current events.
Oh man. I mean, like even that list is long, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about interest rate cuts. We've seen now 2% cuts over the last 7 months. We're talking about new taxes coming in. Flipping tax started January 1st. We're talking about election in the States. We're talking about potential tariffs coming to Canadian exports. We're talking about potential early election federally in Canada. The NDP got in again last year, so density stuff throughout Greater Vancouver. There's a lot.
What is Trump going to do to Vancouver real estate? What is that going to happen? what? Like, there's a lot going on in this world. But where do you want to start with this, Denny? Because I mean, you know, we're catching a lot of this hasn't shown its colors yet, and we still have an election coming up. So there, you know, in our neck of the woods, it's to be announced how that's going to go down. So we'll touch on, like, I guess maybe a little bit of the basics between the platforms of what Poilievre versus the Liberals are, you know, their position on real estate. But I think one big highlight in the world of politics is that the world seems to be going more right now. You know, everything's a little more conservative, a little bit more about less government spending, a little bit more about less taxes, and, you know, we just need businesses to do better. And that seems to have shown its colors based on the election down south. And we're going to see what happens up here. But it seems like the pendulum is shifting. It went very far to the left, and now it's swinging back to the right. And I mean, tariffs aside, we have, you know, I'd say a little more optimism about the future right now. It feels like, regardless of the tariffs, I think our economy our housing market shouldn't be affected this spring in the short term. But we'll see what how it unfolds in the years ahead. And that's a bit of a guess, Denny. I really don't know. It's such weird times right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do feel that we're going to see change in our politics. And based on what we're seeing down below us, you know, I hope we're not the 51st state by the end of the year. But time will tell, I guess. So where do you want to start with? Like, I guess let's start with our side. I mean, Trudeau resigned, and we have an election coming up. And Poilievre seems to be one of the big contenders. So just talking about a couple of items on his platform, you know, a couple things. He was talking about repealing the foreign buyer ban, cutting GST on new construction up to $1 million. So that would save upwards of $50,000 in GST if you bought a $1 million condo. And this will create 30,000 homes annually. I don't know how they measure that, but that's probably a figure that's, you know, a little bit of a stretch, but no GST would encourage more buyers, so it would have some sort of impact. Talks about selling off federal lands. Can't really comment on that one. Don't know. You know, anytime government's involved in development, you know, the concern might be, is it getting fair market value? You know, is it the right call? But that is part of the platform. And just reduce bureaucratic red tape, scrap capital gains tax change. So where all the gain is treated like income, he wants to scrap that. And reducing bureaucratic red tape just regards to reducing development fees, permit fees, development charges, anything that just gets in the way of new development happening. So that's kind of the platform that he's running on. And I mean, and also just, abolish GST on new rental builds. So, you know, to encourage more rental housing. So just no GST there. So I think all in all, we need less taxes. We have some tax stories, but anything that encourages investment, I think, is a step in the right direction. So I get the sense that we're going to see some sort of policy come into place that's going to encourage more investment, and that should help the market.
Are we ever going to see a normal market again? Like, I feel like we're just we're swinging really hard from one side to the other. We're going absolute craziness of 2021, multiple offers everywhere. Market values are skyrocketing in a very short period of time, to interest rate hikes, a ton of government intervention. Market values drop overnight and stay low for a couple of years. Back to, let's open it up again. Is there ever going to be balance in this?
I think one of the headlines that I saw in the news recently, I think it was on CTV or something like that, was that this is the most balanced market we've seen in decades. I mean, that's in a short window, right? Like right now. And what I mean by that is it's a buyer and seller's market at this moment in time. The inventory and sales are fairly balanced. Doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way.
Yeah,
and you go
that's
back a few months, it wasn't. And you know, you're right, it is shifting. But I think that's just because the pendulum is shifting, and at this moment, the pendulum happens to be in a balanced market.
Yeah.
So at this moment in time, we are in a balanced market, but balanced is relative.
Yeah.
You know, even what we're seeing is there's seller products and buyer products out there. You know, you're buying a brand new condo at $1,200 a foot plus, you're in a buyer's market. You're buying a $1.5 million mid-century house with a family-friendly layout on a quiet street, you're in a seller's market. There's a lot of the development in the past decade has been towards towers.
Yeah.
And there's not enough demand for all that. And they're not making more single-family homes. And so the affordable ones, there's not enough supply. And to answer your question, Denny, I think there's blips of balance, and there's segments in the market that are balanced. But if you're looking at that entry level, 3-bedroom up, you know, family-friendly layout, single-family home that's not a fixer-upper, that's turnkey, you can move into, it's probably back to multiple offers. You know, I think we're gonna experience the bidding wars again. We're gonna experience subject-free. You're already experiencing that. We'll get into the stories in a bit.
Multiple,
here. So we're already seeing early signs of it.
Yeah.
I think I'll be more interested to see kind of, you know, the first-time buyer market come back a little bit, like the entry condos. I see that, you know, there's maybe the first-time buyer doesn't want to spend $1,200 a foot, but if you buy something that's 10 years older, I can see those products doing very well. Mm-hmm. I guess the dilemma for first-time buyers is, do you rent or do you buy? You know, that's a question for a lot of people. But I don't think we see balance for long. I think the pendulum moves back and forth. And I think that we're going to start seeing more builders come out of the woodwork this year. So more people that are looking at land again, because that's been a bit of a dog for a while, except for some markets like North Burnaby.
we got stories about North Burnaby.
But yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do you think what is our sentiment going to be when it comes to May this year? You know, we're January 29th right now. Are we going to say it's crazy? It's hot, or are we going to say, yeah, this is a normal May?
Do you want me to answer this question in a way that I would answer to a client, or in a way that I would answer to one of my good friends that is not on camera?
No, let's go good friends. Good friends first.
Good friends. I think this spring is going to be absolute chaos. It is going to be absolute chaos. The amount of phone calls that we're getting right now about people that want to move urgently, like in the next couple months, is, I think I'm underestimating when I say it's 5 times what it was last year. There's just so many more people that have been sitting on the sidelines for a while, waiting out this interest rate environment to make a move. And it seems like a lot of confidence is coming back to buyers and sellers that now is a more approachable time to make a move, even though it's kind of going the opposite direction now, where multiples are coming back on a lot of product types. So I just don't think, when we're talking about all this policy change, the pendulum swinging back and forth and back and forth. What is it covering up? Like, why is there no balance, except for in very short periods of time? It's just a supply and demand issue. It comes back to the actual issue in Greater Vancouver, that there's not enough housing for the amount of people that want to live here. Housing, we're talking about like these family style homes that are 3-bedroom townhouses and entry-level single family. There's not enough of them, and nobody is addressing that issue. Technically.
No, early days of the...
early. I mean, super early days, right? And we talk about Burnaby specifically, and I think there was a number the other day that I heard that there's currently 180 permit applications for these small-scale multi-unit housing developments in Burnaby, which is great. But 180 times 4 units is whatever, 650 units or something like that. That's not changing the outcome and those are 3 years away from being built. That's not changing what is going to happen over the next couple springs, which I think is going to be super, super active for that type of product.
It's going to change. I mean, it's going to. The streets aren't going to change overnight. You know, there is some concern about this new zoning and creating that housing, but it is a step in the right direction. I I think a lot of neighborhoods, not every 100% of neighborhoods, but I think a lot of neighborhoods would benefit from fourplexes and sixplexes if the lots are big enough, or at least duplexes and triplexes if the lots are smaller.
And so many of these municipalities have still are still fighting it.
Yeah, so that's one. I mean, on the update is NDP's still in.
Yeah.
So on election fronts, they're still in. So I think there was a scenario where if they didn't get back in, then some of these cities like Coquitlam, New West would have potentially not proceeded with the density initiative.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. Like, will there be incentives that will actually cause cities to be more development friendly? Because that's kind of the threat federally and provincially. We're going to hold back funds, so you better up your density. And I think I think I saw on the platform for Polyev was he wants to see cities increase their new housing starts by 15% a year. And if not, they hold back infrastructure funding. So, I mean, don't hold me to that exact quote because I got that from ChatGPT. but I mean, it's along the lines of he wants to see, I think the big difference is he wants to see more housing starts, then provide funding, versus I think like our province was wanting to see the density change, then provide funding. But, there's loopholes around it. Like, if you had a zone where you could have a single family home with a basement suite and a coach home, that's 3 dwellings, that somehow exempted you from the 4 to 6 small scale multi-unit zoning, when they're completely different. A house with a basement suite and a carriage home is one owner. It's probably a $3 million house, 2 tenants, versus a 4 to 6 unit small scale multi-unit zoning. You can have 4 to 6 different owners, young families that own their place, and that's not the same as, so it's a very different type of zoning, and I don't think it should replace 4 to 6 units. I think there should be areas that are just single family with a basement suite and a coach home. But I think there's a lot of areas like the transit-oriented development areas and busy streets that should allow, townhouses.
And in a lot of these areas that are becoming more and more and more populated with young families because of things like SkyTrain and amenities, this product type doesn't exist, right? I think this is why we're excited about what this small-scale multi-unit housing is going to provide in 3 to 5 years from now is a product type that doesn't exist in a lot of areas, like North Burnaby, for example, right? North Burnaby is the SkyTrain hub with towers of very, very small condos, brand new, small, high-priced condos, and then it goes out to all single-family up to Hastings. There is maybe 2 townhouse complexes that are not designed super user-friendly because they're 25 years old. And other than that, like, you go from $1 million 2-bedroom condo that's 800 square feet to a $2.1 million single family in that neighborhood, and there's nothing in between. So this is solving a big problem that people, young families that want to stay closer to the city, that, want the lifestyle of all the amenities that Brentwood, somewhere like a Brentwood provides, they just don't have another option. So their option is either condo or East Vancouver older townhome, or moving to the Tri-Cities to get the townhouse space. But that 1.4 to 1.6 3-bedroom 13 to 1,500 square foot townhouse, it doesn't exist in that neighborhood.
No, and it should.
Yeah.
Especially off Willingdon, off Hastings, there should be more of it. Absolutely. And so I think now that the zoning allows for it and it's more predictable and less risky for a developer to go in, while the market's been flat over the last 2 years, Burnaby has sneakily gone up in value in a lot of pockets. So there's, what was 1.8 2 years ago is now 2.1 in, different, for a single family home on an 8,000 square foot lot on a good street in North Burnaby. While the market as a whole has been relatively flat. So it hasn't really been a headline that the land value of Burnaby has been going up this whole time, while others have been flat. But yeah, I mean, just to give you an example, say a 7,500 square foot lot in North Burnaby, if you're lucky to get 6 units on it and have the right access, that would probably rely on a back lane or just the parking is going to be the issue. But say you find one for $2 million. I mean, that would be probably an average North Burnaby location. Those numbers work. You can create townhouses like dwellings. You may not get a garage, or you might get a garage depending on the design. And in kind of looking at what others have, some content I've seen put out there from people analyzing these properties and running the numbers and doing pro formas for these types of developments in the area, it seems like it can be marginally a little more affordable than what it would cost to build a strata, like a typical strata townhouse. I mean, just in short, we're creating, like you said, 1.4 to 1.6, that sort of sweet spot price range. It will create more 1,500 square foot townhomes in that price range and be profitable for the builders that do them at this moment in time based on the numbers that we're seeing. So yes, let's all agree 1.5 isn't affordable housing, but that's the reality we're in. And that's more affordable than $3 million single family homes. So in my opinion, affordable word aside, it is less expensive and more families will want it. Yeah. So I mean, the conversation I've had with a few is Burnaby's predictable right now. Burnaby's leading the charge. Well, I think Vancouver is as well. But cities like North Van, Coquitlam, New Westminster aren't quite there. And New Westminster is a bit of a smaller city, and I know the dynamic isn't conducive to changing fast. But Coquitlam's a bit of a juggernaut, and there's a lot of big lots over there. So when I look at, is this going to happen in Coquitlam? Central Coquitlam, not much further away than, say, North Burnaby, and it's loaded with 8,000 to 10,000 square foot lots. It has smaller ones as well, but you can find larger ones. And say an 8,000 square foot lot in North Burnaby might be 2.1 or 2.2 on a prime street. Yeah. In a prime street in Central Coquitlam, that lot might be 1.7, maybe 1.8 in the best ones, but 1.7. And so 1.7, not predictable that you can do 4 to 6 units, but if Coquitlam follows Burnaby and that trend continues, it's just a matter of time before Coquitlam's right for the picking on those builders too. Yeah.
So much of this is new, so maybe, excuse us for sharing thoughts and kind of exploring our thoughts together. But one of my questions for Jamie, if Coquitlam does adopt, let's say, identical to what Burnaby has done. So Burnaby has produced a city map where you can click on any lot in Burnaby now, and it'll tell you how many units you can build there, 4 or 6, depending on how close you are to transit. If Coquitlam does the same thing, majority of that central Coquitlam area is going to be 4 units because it's farther away from transit. On those 8,000 square foot lots, you're going to be building 4 large homes, like 22 to 2,500 square feet. Is the appetite there? Is the buyer pool there for someone that, young families that want to spend $2 million on a 2,500 square foot new unit? Or because of the, we use the term affordability lightly, but because of the more affordable single family in Coquitlam, at starting at 1.6, 1.7 for entry level, kind of in that neighborhood, would those types of buyers be then moving to single family at those price points? Meaning, what I like about North Burnaby is the lots are a little smaller, which kind of forces developers to build these 1,600 square foot townhomes, which keeps the price point a little lower, 1.5, 1.6 roughly. That I think is going to be attractive to a lot of young families. But if you're building 2,500 square feet units, those, to make any money for a developer, they have to be in Central Coquitlam 2.1, 2.2. Is there a market for that right now? Probably not right now.
That's a very good point. I think it makes much more sense at 6 units. So like when I'm talking about Coquitlam, it's also, let's be straight. If you're a builder looking to add value to a property and do one of these developments, Burnaby is predictable right now, and Coquitlam is not. So Coquitlam, the strategy is anticipation that it will follow Burnaby, but it's more of a buy, hold, wait, see. Yeah. If you bought a lot, a good, property with a good lot in Central Coquitlam, around 1.7, my thought is that value of that lot is going to be worth more than 1.7 in a year from now and 2 years from now. And in a year or 2 from now, you're going to see if the density changes. And if the density changes favorably, you decide to do the development. If it doesn't, you take advantage of the market gain you got during that time. But it's a risk and it's a bet. Mm-hmm. But in some cases, it for a person that doesn't mind living in a mid-century home, it's a great, it's nice to be backed up by land value that has future development. Like anyone that wants to get into a single family, if you can live in 2,000 square feet built in 1960, and it happens to sit on 8,500 square foot lot in Coquitlam, you'd be buying it for 1.7 if it's kind of dated original condition right now. Yeah. And in 2 years from now, it might be a 6-unit zoning. And the moment these projects start completing and selling, it's going to have predictable sale prices. It's going to create more confidence for builders. The numbers are going to be more clear. And we're going to see lifts on land where it makes sense.
Yeah.
And, because this zoning's blanketed everywhere, it's not having a huge impact on land. But if North Burnaby were the only place where the zoning changed and the rest of the city didn't change, I think they'd be up another 10% than they are right now. And that means that what was 1.8 2 years ago would probably be 2.5 right now if it was isolated to just North Burnaby getting the zoning change. So I think in short, Denny, Como Lake, Austin, if you're believing like the 400 meters from bus stop, there are a lot of quiet streets that are within, not rapid like SkyTrain, but frequent bus. Yeah. Probably a safer bet if that's the angle, is to really try to get that development. But ideally, if you're ready to build right now, Burnaby's ready to go. Coquitlam's a bit of a uncertainty, and that's the same with North Van, same with New West. So, it's more of a buy and hold strategy.
If we're gonna start, should we start sharing some stories?
I think we should probably share some
Okay,
stories.
because I want to start with Brentwood because I have some really specific examples. You were throwing out some numbers. The official density change came in Burnaby middle of last year, I think it was, May?
Yeah.
Ish,
about there.
Let's say May-ish of 2024. So it's really interesting to look at these prime streets north of Brentwood Mall, Ridge Lawn, Brentwood Lawn, Fair Lawn. Yeah, they all are lawns. It's interesting to look at, through this higher interest rate environment, how market value has changed there solely because of the density. So you go back to 2022. Middle of 2022, there was a 50 by 122 lot, prime street, sold for 1.72. That was June 2022. There was also another one that was on the high end, had some renos in the house.
What street was that? 170? Do you know?
That was Brent Lawn.
Okay.
And then there was a 60 by 114 that sold, that had some renos that sold for 1,895. So that one, very livable home. Could have easily gone to end user who plans to live there for 10, 15 years. Flash forward 12 months to middle 2023, a 55 by 122 sold for 1,975. That was the high land value sale of 2023. And there was a 60 by 122, so a bigger lot that sold for 176, land value 2023. The most recent sales are all over 2 million. There's been
Are they registered yet on the MLS, or are you just?
So there's a few from the fall. There's at least 3. We've been watching pretty closely that neighborhood for clients recently, but in the fall there was at least 3 that I can remember that were between 2,050,000 and 2,150,000. And there was one this past week that we wrote an offer on that got 5 offers that listed at 2 million. It was a 56 by 120. And we wrote over 2.1 and we didn't get it. So I'm guessing it's going to be in the range of 2.15. So even backtrack to
good area, but mediocre positioning in that area, close to Willingdon Ave.
There was some quirks with that lot for sure.
Yeah.
It was not the
inside lot,
not the best one.
No view. Not on the top of that little hill, like that little mound. So it's not as desirable as like High Lawn or higher up there.
Has a little like gully thing at the back of the lot that you'd have to build like a driveway over top of.
Oh, geotechnical is going to be tough there. Yeah.
Has a covenant on title from the 50s that tells you you're only allowed to build single family. So there's some risk there too. There's a lot going on with that one. And it got 5 offers and let's say roughly 2.15 comparatively to middle of 2022 when interest rates were starting to climb, where we saw a similar lot size sell for 172. That's 400K.
And we had a few clients buy and build in that neighborhood. And I recall one of them went without competition. One of them bought with 6 offers. And I think the prices ranges that they paid were in the 1.6 to 1.78 range.
Yeah.
This is, call it 3 years ago to 5 years ago.
Yeah.
At the time, they felt that they were just well overpaying. And these were top tier lots. Those lots, if they didn't even build homes on them, those lots would probably be 2.4. And they're really top tier in that neighborhood. So it's crazy how land can continue to appreciate in our fine city, especially in areas like Burnaby too.
Even through 6% interest rates.
Yeah, and it's early days in January, so we're sharing individual stories are probably the best way to talk about the market right now
Yeah.
because the data is not going to really encompass it. But I did, Denny, I did look at the sales as like a whole in Burnaby. So year to date, not that it's January 29th, timestamp it. So really, and any registered sale on the MLS right now, for the January sales, we're probably only seeing like 2/3 of the registered sales. So a lot of them are probably haven't hit. But in Burnaby in the last this year, the average sale price was about 2.3. Which 2.3 million in Burnaby is, a nicely renovated home on a 33-foot lot in North Burnaby, say, Vancouver Heights or something like that. A mediocre reno on a 50-foot lot or a Home Depot shed on a Brent lawn property like you're talking about on a 66-foot lot. So it's, 2.33 million. And again, a lot of these sales were from listings from last year. So early days in the market, but I guess luxury high-end homes are still struggling a bit. Clearly, low-end single family is not.
Is not.
And we have a listing in Capitol Hill that had more offers and more action. Like we got a couple offers this week. We had the busiest open houses last week that we've had in the time we've had it listed, and the competition around our listing is getting offers as well. So it's a scenario where the advantage for sellers early in the market is less competition and more buyers showing up. So right now we're in a position where, there could be some listings that getting more success now because lower competition. We've seen this. We saw this last year for a blip as well with some sales that we had.
Yeah.
Typically, I often suggest you don't know the market 5 years from now, but sell in May or June, right? May or June's safest bet. Every year is different, and there can be advantages to selling early in the year. But usually when rates are coming down and the market's starting to warm up, my guess is we're going to see good sales now, but they might just continue to get better throughout the year. Yeah.
Can we maybe just touch on market value? Because this really small little square that we're drawing around Brentwood is not how a lot of the rest of the Lower Mainland is reacting. Seeing a 20% increase in 2 years on land value in Brentwood is an anomaly, and that's not happening outside of that little bubble, really. Even other areas of Burnaby, a lot of people have asked with the new density stuff in Burnaby, is land value increasing? And I'd say it's really specific to neighborhood. A lot of Burnaby has not seen land value increases that is outside of those like really prime neighborhoods super close to SkyTrain and amenities. And outside of Burnaby, I'd say land value has been flat or gone down over the last couple of years.
I think to acknowledge how weird our market is, there are pockets in Burnaby, same city as we're talking about, that peaked in 2016.
Yeah.
If you bought a lot in Deer Lake, say Buckingham Heights, Lower Deer Lake, well, Buckingham Heights specifically, there was a few land value sales around $3 million in 2016, 2017. And those prices haven't repeated themselves since. So while North Burnaby, Brentwood area has gone up 20% last year, Buckingham land value is still trying to get back to that, is still under what it was 8 years ago. And what sold for $3 million at that, this was when foreign buyers were kind of more of a thing in certain markets with Richmond, far west side of Vancouver, and luxury Burnaby. Some areas just blew up real quick for a moment there in 2016. And luxury had its heyday back then, and then they put on the foreign buyer tax and then the foreign buyer ban, and then the market kind of checked itself.
Yeah.
And those areas have not come back to their 8 year ago prices, which is pretty wild. It just kind of shows like how inflated our market could be if we were opened up to the world without any restrictions.
Yes, absolutely. I know. Yeah.
I looked at Coquitlam as well. Arbitrarily, just looking at the data across the board of single-family homes from, say, Vancouver to Coquitlam and everything in between, seemed about 15% of the single-family home sales year to date got above full price. So call it, 3 out of 20 listings are getting multiple offers. Average sale price in Coquitlam this year has been 1.86 million, which seems about kind of in line with what you'd expect. That's maybe a slightly renovated mid-century home on an 8,000 square foot lot in central Coquitlam.
Yeah.
One fun fact here, Denny, one sale year to date in New West. So the average sale price as of yesterday on the MLS in New West, guess what it was? Average sale price, data, one sale. Pretty skewed sample, but
2.2.
Now, 1,079,000. So as of yesterday, New Westminster probably is the lowest average sale price. Also, 181 average days on market for that one sale. and the average house size based on that one sale is 1,070 square feet. It was a tiny little house. So we're talking, like, there's one sale in New West registered right now. It's still early days. It's more of a joke here. But the funny thing is Port Moody has 2 sales.
Yeah.
And at this very moment in time, the average sale in Port Moody is 3.5 times the average sale in New West. The average size of a home sold and the price point is 2.6 million. So the data is just trickling in. Most of our inclination of where the market's going is just based on the offers we've been negotiating the last 2 weeks and the traffic we've been getting through our open houses.
Yeah. And that's, I think, very notable is just how many more people are coming through open houses. We had a 2-bedroom condo in the New West Key last week that, if it was listed let's say in the summer of 2024, I would have expected maybe 2 to 4 groups to come through, and we had 13. The townhouse that we had in New West had, what did it have? 20 groups come through?
20 groups. Yeah, busy.
That would not have existed last year. The house in Brentwood that sold a couple days ago that we had a client offer on had over 40 groups come through over the weekend. It's a different pace. And I think it just goes to show that how many people have been sitting on the sidelines, and the call volume that we've seen early in the year. It's going to be a much more active spring. It's hard to predict right now where prices will go because we don't know what's going to happen with interest rates. We don't know what's going to happen with federal election stuff, with tariffs from the US, but it's going to be more active. And this was one of the things we said last year, that we were pretty sure sales volume was going to be up in 2024 comparatively to 2023.
We're not right all the time, but it was up. Let's revisit some of our last year's predictions.
It wasn't up.
It was not.
Overall sales volume from 2023 to 2024 was down 3.2%. The sales volume in 2024 comparatively to 2021. Want to take a guess?
2021.
2021 was
like 70,000? Okay, let's forget the number.
Was the crazy year.
I'm going to say it is maybe not quite a third, but let's say 40%.
44% down.
44. Sorry, I was saying 40% of the sales volume. So you're saying it was down 44%?
Down 44%.
Oh, okay. That's
comparatively to 2021.
Because that year was wild.
That year was wild. That year, registered sales on MLS were over 79,000 versus last year was 44,000.
Okay. So it's still a significant adjustment, but I got ahead of myself a little bit there.
So one of my main predictions, which I guess at this point doesn't seem that bold, but sales volume has to be up this year. It has to. Just with the amount of phone calls, the amount of people coming through open houses and showings right now, how quick things are getting accepted offers or getting offers comparatively to the last couple of years, the volume has to go up.
Let's be more specific here, Denny. Based on a 12 calendar month, how many of those months will be above the 10-year average in terms of sales volume?
Above 10-year average? 4.
Okay.
4 or 5.
Okay, so most of the year will still be below the 10-year average, but that is, just to put in perspective, even if it was, say, the year-round average was just under the 10, it would still be much more sales than last year.
Yeah. Even like looking at last year's sales, January 2026, I think we're going to look back at 2025 and say there was 35% more sales in 2025 than there were in 2024.
35%. Okay, bold prediction.
That would put us in the range of what? 65,000 sales.
Okay, so in the
versus
peak,
44.
and what was the peak volume?
79.9.
Okay, I accept your prediction.
Thank you.
Just on Denny's prediction note, it's basically more sales are anticipated. I think one little thing we're seeing, one little tip we're seeing, suggestion potentially, if you're buying up, if your purchase is more important than your sale, meaning it's more valuable, it's a longer term family home, maybe you're going from a condo to a townhouse or a condo to a house, it is much better to buy in, you want to buy in better buying conditions. You don't want to, ideally you'd like to buy with doing an inspection with subjects without competition. You ran into a scenario in North Burnaby that was probably catered towards more builders, but maybe some end users, and it got 5 offers. that's frustrating to buy in. So what we've seen definitely some clients that are aware that the market, they firmly believe that the market's shifting this year, and the sooner they get in, the sooner they avoid the noise, the sooner they are able to negotiate one-on-one, do an inspection, and just not get caught up in the bidding wars.
Yeah.
What can happen real quickly is every listing gets multiple offers, and every listing sells for a little more than the previous one. And the market doesn't really do this gradual climb. It doesn't really seem to do this. Like, prices are up 4.5% this year. What we see practically is, a good house in Glenbrook, North New West sold for 1.7. Another comparable, and it got 5 offers. The next one, 4 of those offers missed out, and they're going to show up at that next house. And one of those buyers is like, I don't want to miss this one, and is going to offer 1.75.
Yeah.
And then the next one's going to be 1.8. And so it jumps 10% in a couple months, but it goes in spurts.
Yeah.
And that's an example of a turnkey family house on a quiet street. But on the macro level, you might see a stat like 4.5%. But if you're a buyer that's looking for a house or townhouse right now, and you're just saying there's nothing available, guess what? It's not a good sign. Because there's probably other buyers saying that right now, and the next one's going to get some attention, and the one after that's going to get even more. So I think this is showing signs of a market where, particularly for the buyer that's buying up, it's probably better to start earlier. It's better to you're not going to get away with a subject to sale necessarily, but you're just less likely to run into that spring madness that you're predicting. Any comment on that?
On your subject to sale comment, we had a subject to reviewing the title search so that we could dig into this covenant on this Burnaby house.
This is too much of a subject, Denny.
And the agent called me the next day. I explained it to him, like why we were curious about this, and it wasn't going to work in doing some more due diligence the next day and finding out exactly what that meant. It wasn't going to work for these guys anyway, so glad that we did that. But he called me the next day and he's like, why would you put that in there? Basically disgusted that we had a subject in the offer. So imagine what would have happened or his reaction if we had a subject to sale in the offer.
Oh, he'd be thrown out of the room. Yeah. It rules out your ability to get a place. Like, for years we were operating where people still had to sell, but they would just take the risk by buying with a longer close.
Yeah.
So, that's the difference. Last fall, you could do subject to sale.
Yeah.
Now, maybe not.
Want another good?
Yeah.
This is more young family style unit. So we mentioned earlier that North Burnaby, specifically Brentwood, doesn't have many townhouse options. There's this one complex with, I can't remember, 29 units or 35 units that was built in 2000. So it's 25 years old. One came up in there. It was 1,100 square feet, 2-bedroom, underground parking, no garages. Listed at $979. Last sale in the complex, $950, which was a little over a year ago. This one had a decently updated kitchen. Listed $979, which was a bit low. We offered $1,075,000. Sold for $112,000. 2-bedroom townhouse, 1,100 square feet. Now 25 years old. Likely work coming up in the complex at that age. You are now $1,000 a foot for 25 years old.
Yeah, that's for a 25-year-old place.
That got 6 offers.
Yeah, that's going to help justify all these small-scale multi-unit builders to get on their butts and start putting these places out there. Because if 25 years old is getting $1,000 a foot, imagine brand new. That's a sign of the times.
Yeah.
Do you remember when, I think it was 2021, where there was such a dramatic change in prices in a window? Maybe it was 2022. I think it might have been 2022, where like a Fraser Valley townhouse, I remember doing a CMA for a townhome. And in that complex, let's call it a 2,000 square foot townhome in, Panorama Ridge. I was doing the CMA, call it in February. And I think it was the summer, let's say in June. When I looked back at the August sales from the previous August, it was $800,000. And then the sales that happened that March, April, the peak of, call it 2022 spring, was $1.2 million. So it went from $800,000 to $1.2 million. And then by the summertime, it went back down to $1 million. So it went up 400,000, back down 200,000. It was just madness, chaos. There was a blip in the peak of 2022 that saw some prices that won't be repeated for a while. It's just what happens when like I said, with bidding war after bidding war after bidding war, eventually they stop. And the last one that happened was at the high price, right? So what you're talking about is a big leap in prices in a complex in Burnaby. It's a sign. It's not as extreme as a Surrey townhouse that goes from 800 to 1.2 in half a year. But I would say it's probably gonna, that right there is a clue that things will probably get more expensive.
Yeah.
The next one, 1.12 sets the precedent for the next one. So unless the North Burnaby market's flooded with townhouses at a lower price, I think the next one's going to be a higher price than 112.
Because of these scenarios, especially so early in the year, there isn't a lot of data. It's difficult to evaluate properties because you're looking back in time and you're looking at sales from, October, November that they're probably going to beat. So there's a little bit of optimistic projection involved in evaluations right now, especially when you're meeting people that are, a couple months away from selling. But these are just prime examples of the numbers are shifting a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, one, to predict the activity. Not everything, like we mentioned a couple stories where we're seeing a lot more people through open houses. Not everything is like that. Luxury stuff is not like that. Larger condos in some of the suburbs aren't like that. They're still slow. They're still sitting on market a little while. But it's difficult to predict in a lot of scenarios right now what those exact sale prices are going to be because there's these one-off scenarios. Then there's just not a lot of data yet for 2025.
You have two examples in Burnaby, townhouse, single-family home. What are the hot products right now? What are you seeing that is actually what are the multiple offer stories that you're hearing right now or the high sale prices? Single-family homes? Do you have any other examples to pull from?
It's really that entry-level family home. So whether that is single-family in Coquitlam, that's 1718, whether that is the Burnaby lots that we're talking about, the townhouses that don't exist around Brentwood, townhouses in the suburbs, they're a lot busier. Yeah,
what
than
is
they were a year
not?
ago.
What is not? Maybe that's more importantly. What is still going to be a dog for the next 6 to 12 months, or at least 6 months, call it?
Land outside of Burnaby.
Yeah, potentially.
Because for the sole reason that nobody knows what you can do with it yet.
Yeah,
There's no certainty. There's no certainty on timelines. Burnaby's been really specific and proactive about here's what we expect in terms of you purchasing a lot and getting plans approved with a permit in terms of a timeline. Other municipalities, even when we get to the point where they have a little map that's fun to use and click on properties across the city and it says you can do 4 or 6, we still don't know what that timeline looks like. And builders want to know that before they're investing and spending a lot of time and energy on that stuff.
Maybe to clarify, slow is, I guess, relative. Land has been performing poorly for 2 years.
Yeah.
So in theory, slow is still probably better than last year and the year before. So land in Coquitlam, for example, I would anticipate what sold for, say, land value 1.7 last year would probably be selling for 1.75 or 1.8 this year. I think it will see a gain, but we're not talking about the gain that North Burnaby saw. We're talking about a gain that's just kind of correlated to lending becoming a little bit more cheaper.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Land value is still going to struggle. I think more likely the fixer-uppers, the extensively renovated homes, people don't really want to touch those as much. Very few buyers want to fix up a 100-year-old home right now, especially a weird layout on a busy street. Buyers are still selective, waiting for. It's not crazy enough a market where people are really conceding their want list. That happens in the hottest times where people start, buying the busy street home, and I still find buyers are still a little bit more selective and picky and not settling. Higher end condos, there's just so many of them. It's hard. It's easy to pick on. I think just a product of our zoning has created too many of them in the city, and it far outweighs the demand.
Yeah.
And with an aging population, there could be a day where high end condos do reap the rewards and become a hot product. But I've never seen high end condos be a hot product in the suburbs.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see maybe a hotter product, and it's probably case by case depending on what it is, but is that $500,000 to $600,000 one bedroom or the entry level two bedroom, the entry level condos, and not necessarily bidding war products, but they could go from I could see them predictably becoming like selling in a week, selling fast. The $500,000 one bedroom or the $650,000 $700,000 two bedroom, or you sold a two bedroom den in the fall that had a good floor plan for high sevens. So, a two bedroom den that's under 8, I think those are in demand.
Yeah.
1,200 a foot, North Burnaby, like 700 for 500 square foot, probably has a little time to go.
Yeah.
There's also, I guess, there's more buildings completing this year. So that high price per foot condo is going to get more saturated this year. Yeah, more.
And then luxury stuff. So whether it be newer homes in the suburbs or Belcarre is one that we have a couple clients in at the moment, that it's a low turnover neighborhood to begin with, but at those price points of 2.5 to 3.5 kind of range, they're very slow at the moment.
Yeah, they will probably be much more active this year than they've been in the last 2 years.
Totally.
So we'll see more luxury sales this year is my guess.
Yeah. Probably later into the year though, probably May, June, July, maybe into the fall. Just a lot of the buyers for those types of properties, the newer homes in, let's say, Coquitlam, New West, Tri-Cities, a lot of the buyers have something to sell and they're not necessarily ready to sell in late January.
Yeah, I agree. Any other predictions for the year ahead?
I feel like 2025 is going to be a year of low sleep.
Yes. Yeah,
Meaning we're going to be really busy.
It's going to be busy.
I'm excited for the year.
Yeah.
As a consumer, I like your sentiment earlier. Get ready earlier in the year. I think if you're waiting till May, June to kind of start shopping, it's going to be frustrating.
You might be one of those, and again, depending on what you're buying, you might make sense to sell first. For a lot of it's not as predictable a market where every sale is guaranteed. And if you're buying up and the buy is important, sometimes you have to put yourself out there and potentially be homeless by selling first and not knowing where you're going.
That equation's complex.
Yeah.
Have a detailed conversation with Jamie or myself.
Call us. No, exciting year, busy year. Realtors buckle down. Buyers get out there early.
There's one other thing we wanted. Let's just quickly, because there's a couple funny things and it's just interesting to address. So from last year, we always do this podcast early in the year, kind of market update, share some predictions for the year. Last year, there's a few things we mentioned. We didn't necessarily go too into specifics, but interesting to mention that, we're not always right in terms of what we think is going to happen in a calendar year. One thing I said last year was the sales volume of 2023 can't continue. 2024 has to improve. And that showed to go down 3.2%. James mentioned the 12-month flipping rule. So this was the Canadian anti-flipping tax rule that came in last year. Said it will have absolutely zero effect on the market. I think that's probably
I think it's probably cost more to implement than it has than it's generated in revenue. Yeah. We'll never see those numbers though.
Something we both talked about, and not that we're rental price experts in any way, and nor do we necessarily have super specific stats on this, but we noted rental prices had increased through 2023, and that likely won't backtrack, and it has this year. Or last year.
Yeah.
Rental prices went down. I think there's just more inventory, less people moving around, more people maybe potentially moving out of the city. But rental prices overall, I want to say went down like 3 to 5% across Greater Vancouver. Rentals are harder to rent currently than they were 12 months ago. So we were wrong there.
I think the one exception to the rental, you're right. The rental market has backtracked. It's not it's not as strong as it was 6 months ago, 12 months ago, or when we predicted that.
Yeah.
But single family rentals, which are unique, they're probably not struggling.
Totally.
There's if you have a family or a large family and dogs or something that's, and you can't afford to buy a home, there's a lot of people like that are looking for homes and not a lot of them available for rent. Yeah. So the rates that a single family home is getting is quite out there. I know of a person that rents their home that's probably in the value of 1.9 million, and it's renting out for $7,000 a month. Now, granted, 1.9 million. I don't want to give all the details. This is a North Vancouver home. It is in a high price market, but I mean that's not bad. I mean, not long ago, those houses were renting for $3,000 a month, or $3,500 a month, and now it's $7,000.
Majority of the rentals are small condos, right?
Yeah.
So when you hear stats in other podcasts or from people analyzing this stuff saying Vancouver rentals overall down 3 to 5% kind of range, it's not every product type. It's a lot to do with those like 1-bedroom condos in newer buildings that are priced at $3,000 or $3,500 a month have backtracked to like 26 or 27 or $2,800 a month.
Maybe to throw you on the spot with a weird kind of, sorry, do you have another prediction there that we mistargeted?
There's one other.
Oh, let's hear it.
The rescission period.
So we're 1 for 3, is that right so far?
Give or take. Okay. Yeah. We talked about the rescission period because that was new, I think 2023 did it come in? So that was the first full calendar year looking at that. And we didn't, what did we say? We thought the rescission period would not really do anything, and we were right. But it wasn't a multiple offer scenario.
Yeah, it was the market.
The market wasn't very multiple offer. Will we see more of the rescission period used in 2025?
We did find that we did have a conversation around when, say, the market gets back to spring 2022 madness.
Yeah.
There could be buyers that take advantage of the rescission period, and there's ways that you can do that, but. I have yet to have someone pay that rescission amount. Have you had anyone pay that rescission amount?
We had one person last year.
Okay. So it is doing something. Yeah. I think minimal impact, I also remember, what was there? There was another, I can't remember a prediction last year, but there was something that I said that had the rental lift. Rentals were lifted a year ago. So rental restrictions were lifted. And I thought that would have the biggest impact on the market, if anything, out of the legislation changes that were going on a year ago. Yeah. So I still think that that's a step in the right direction. That's the biggest impact to create housing. But yeah, no, I don't know, Denny. What do you want to say about rescissions?
I think in a year like this year, where we've already started seeing more multiple offer scenarios, I just think you'll hear about it a little more versus last year. When I say last year, 2023, we didn't hear about it at all. Like it wasn't really a thing. 2024, I don't know if we had one person in 2023 when it was announced to use it. 2024, I can't remember being impacted in any transaction by it. Yeah. Other than forgetting to write down the dates in the contract because it's super annoying and they change all the time.
Oh, yeah.
That happens almost every contract.
Yeah. More likely to have an error in your contract now with that rescission period. Hopefully it doesn't void it. I think one thing that could be interesting this year, and we have these predictions, but really we should just call them like simulations. If this happens, then that. If this, then that. Because you can predict something, but then government can come in and completely take it a different direction. Based on the election down south, and if Canada follows suit with going more right this time around, it'd be interesting to see how much lending affordability improves for, say, someone making $100,000 a year. So right now you qualify for X at $100,000 a year. I could see by the end of the year that X going up 20% or something significant. So, like stress test, whether the rates come down and you can afford more, or whether the stress test gets loosened, or whatever amortization or whatever strings they pull. I do feel that we're going to see this year, you're going to be able to get more for your income in a loan. You're going to qualify for more throughout the year. Yeah. That's an obvious prediction, though, I would say. Prices are going to go up a little. You're going to qualify for more. Yeah. Any unorthodox or any, I don't know, odd predictions that might be debatable? Do you have one that might come to mind that the masses may say, Denny, you're going to be off on that?
Nothing's coming.
No, it's probably everything's pretty predictable. We're seeing signs of it right now. Let's leave it at that.